Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Let's Max Warframe. Today we're going to be taking a look at a very heavily requested and often underrated secondary, the twin pistols, the Akmagnus. Now the Akmagnus are the dual versions of the single Magnus, and as you can imagine require two Magnus to be able to build the weapon, which doesn't make it a cheap one, with 6 Hurricane cells being the most pricey of the materials, along with a very pricey 160,000 credits. So what do you actually get for all this cost? Well, you get a weapon that is extremely well balanced between the damage types, with the majority coming in impact as 20.3, and the puncture and slash both being 12.4, making the Akmagnus a very well-rounded sidearm against any and all factions. However, with the impact being slightly higher, it does favour the weapon more against the shielded units. The weapon keeps on with it being extremely well rounded by boasting not only the highest critical chance out of all the secondary weapons of 25%, but also very easily near the top of the secondary weapons when talking about status as well, with a base status chance of also 25%. Now what this means is that it's so well rounded that you can either do a full crit build, you can do a full status build, you could do an elemental build, you could even do a hybrid of the three to make an absolutely fantastic sidearm. The accuracy of the weapon is also pretty reasonable, and with a fire rate of 8.3 rounds per second, it's not slow at putting those rounds down range either. Now, the Akmagnus does have a few downsides, most notably its reload. The reload time at 3 seconds can feel like an absolute age when in a heavy fight, and when you combine that with a relatively small magazine size of 16, I mean, it can feel that you're emptying your magazine so quickly with that decent fire rate and spending the majority of the mission on reload. But the thing is, although this is a notable downside to the weapon, it's not really a big deal. It can be modded for, and the issue is almost completely eliminated. And if I'm honest, ignoring the fairly large construction costs, this is the only downside I can really think of this weapon. Okay, so let's move on to starting to mod the Akmagnus. Now, it doesn't come with any polarities as standard, however we're going to add 4 former to the weapon. Ignore the amount of former that's actually on here and what's up here, it's kind of all over the place because I've changed the builds a couple of times. We're actually going to only need these 3 Vs and this dash. So we have got a bunch of mods, in fact a whole bunch of mods that are going to remain the same between all 3 of our builds. We've got Hornet Strike for damage, Barrel Diffusion for multi-shot, Lethal Torrent, which is also going to add extra fire rate plus multi-shot. We got Pistol Gambit, which is going to take up the critical chance all the way up to 55%, and Target Cracker, which is going to buff the critical damage up to 3.2 times. Now, for our Grineer build, we're going to go with Heavy Radiation, we're going to go with Toxin, which is going to deal with the 2 different armor types of the Grineer. So the heavy armor, we're going to go with Jolt and Primed Heated Charge, which is going to bring up radiation. And then we're going to use Pistol Pestilence to deal with the armor that the things like the heavy gunners are wearing. So that would be the best against them, so radiation and toxin. Now for the corpus, we're going to go with Jolt and Frostbite to bring up magnetic, and we're going to go pathogen rounds for extra toxin damage against the fleshy corpus. And in the void, we're going to go corrosive and heat, so Pistol Pestilence and Jolt, and Primed Heated Charge. Now, all of these builds you can actually put in the dash polarity. You can change it out for quick draw, which will increase that reload speed. It kind of depends on what you want the weapons for. If you're going to run them more as a primary, I would put the quick draw on there. If you're going to use them as a hard-hitting secondary that you pull out when your primary is out of ammo, then I would go with the full damage. It's entirely up to you how you want to use it. It really is personal preference. I quite like running the quick draw on here, and every single one of these builds can be changed out if you just move the mods around a little bit. As you can see here, just change out the Grineer build, and you go with the radiation, so you go with the heavier armoured build. So Scorch and Jolt for the radiation, and then quick draw. So each of these builds can actually be changed out in such a way that the quick draw is going to make much more sense on there. And there you go with the Corpus build as well. Okay, so on to my recommendation as to whether I think it's worth maxing out this weapon and spending the resources on doing so, and the answer is absolutely yes it is. People were going to rightly point to the Vaykor Merlock, or even the Sinnoh Gammakor as the best secondary weapons in the game. And as I say, honestly, they're right to do so. But the Akmagnus are right up there with them. When you think of top secondary weapons in the game, these sidearms are often overlooked and kind of lay forgotten by the side of the road, which is a crying shame because they are fantastic. They look awesome, and with the Tenno created skins on there, with the Hive Light skin being featured on my Akmagnus in the video, it just goes so far to show how much people love these weapons. The damage they put out is fantastic, and that mix of the raw damage from the crit and the status that this weapon can put out can take it a long, long way. But I know I could have used Boar or Maim on there with the build. The base damage is decent enough to do so, but honestly the loss of the mod slots for either the crit damage or the elementals, it's just not worth it, and would cause the weapon to fall off fairly quickly, and far too quickly for my liking anyway. I also know people are going to talk about using Sunning Speed as the reload mod, but the loss of that extra 8% reload isn't worth the addition of another 10% status, with the status actually adding only another 1% status to the weapon, and the reload adds an extra 0.1 seconds. Now, I know there's really not a lot in there, I have to admit that, but if you think about it, if you're reloading 10 times, that makes it 1 second quicker, so it does add up quickly. The Akmagnus are often forgotten, but actually the ideal template to see how to balance weapons. It has options for builds, it has decent enough crit and status without overbearing base damage making it ridiculously overpowered. People for the longest time have been talking about power creep and buffing and nerfing, however the whole time we've had the most perfectly balanced sidearms right here, lying forgotten in most people's arsenal. So is it worth it? Absolutely yes it is. As always guys, many thanks for watching. Please remember to leave a like and subscribe, it helps me out a ton, and I shall see you in the next episode.